We're in the last portion of Genesis, Vayechi. The last time we had Vayechi, it was sort of, I'm always reminded of the portion Chaye Sarah, which literally means the life of Sarah earlier and that the first thing that happens in Parasha Chaye Sarah is that Sarah dies. So that we have a portion called the life of Sarah, but Sarah dies. And here we have a portion, Vayechi, which means and he lived, and everybody dies. So, well, the he it's referring to is Jacob, excuse me, who dies in this portion, as does Joseph eventually. It's one of those portions. It's kind of wrapping up one stage of Jewish life, Israelite life. It's wrapping up the first book of the Torah, which begins with the creation of the world and ends with the creation of essentially the Jewish people. Another kind of creation story of in preparation for what's coming next, which of course is Exodus and the Exodus.
The Torah seems to be oriented around big stories.
Big stories, yes.
And they just progress.
The Torah is
one big plot after
is definitely organized around some large strokes of ideas and principles that sort of weave their way throughout. But there are certainly big chunks of stories. I mean, look, the narrative of the Jewish people, hi Margot, the narrative of the Jewish people is we were chosen by God in the Torah. We were slaves and we went free. We were chosen, I'll be coughing for an hour now, chosen by God and with the covenant of Abraham, then repeated Isaac, then repeated Jacob. And then we use that theme, the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob theme and the promise of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob forever to this day. We're still picking up the Siddur, the prayer book, and we read a prayer, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, sort of one of our running themes.
But it makes one think also that the stories can't be written really until that era has passed.
Oh, that.
So,
yes.
Yes, the stories were not written by God in ink at the time.
No.
They are written afterwards by people who
What do you think God's pen looked like? God who was writing the Torah.
And where did he get the ink?
Where did he get the ink?
What color ink did he use?
She get the ink.
Or she, right? But
yes.
That makes me think the era that we're in now has yet to be written. It won't be in the Torah, but the Torah is a closed book already.
Right.
But it will be written in other studies. And what will this era encompass?
Well, we often, I think, talk about, particularly when it comes to politics and politicians or presidents or one generation after the next, saying, when history will be written, how will history look back upon this era or that era or this era or that era? Because we recognize that contemporaneously we don't have the same perspective of what it means, that is, what the impact of decisions made today will be 10 years from now, 50 years from now, whatever. And that's just rational, logical, that things have consequences. Decisions have consequences. Acts have consequences. And we can't necessarily, predict, I don't want to show you my back, necessarily predict in advance what the consequences of decisions that we make today. It's one of the great challenges of life, the art of living, is trying to figure out what are the big things and what are the little things in life. And one of the revelations of life, part of wisdom of growing older, in life is recognizing, having a perspective that's different on your own life, first of all, sort of using that as a model for the world, recognizing that when you're in something, you're in it. You're just living it, you're doing it, you're making choices, making the best decision you can given the information you have at the time, and it doesn't pay to beat yourself up constantly about why did I do that, and why did I do that, and why did I do that, because the reason you did it at the time was it made the most sense to you at the time. You can't be over here and over here at the same time. You're here when you're here when you're here, and you're over here when you're over here. And, it's part I was, yes.
To take it a little further, I saw a play years ago.
Yes.
The play took place in the future, and there was an archaeological dig, and they got down to an era when they used Formica, and we were called the age of the Formica.
The age of Formica. That's funny. I like that. Yeah, look, we're going to be called the age of waste.
Yes.
The age of plastic. We're going to be whatever. Who knows what we're going to be called? But just like we don't know collectively in the grand scale exactly how we're going to be judged, so to speak, when our own history is written. And just like, as Judy suggests, the scholars of Torah often look at descriptions that take place in the Torah, including this week's Torah portion, where Jacob gives that sort of rambling and not always understandable testament, if not blessings, to his sons, anyway, some of which, they're not clear anyway, all of them. Scholars look at that and go, well, the fact that he picks Judah and says to Judah in particular, you're going to flourish and you're going to be the leader and you're going to be this and you're going to be that, suggests that it was written after the fact when in fact the tribe of Judah was the dominant tribe, and we call ourselves Jews. We don't call ourselves Benjamins. We call ourselves Jews, allegedly from Judah, from Yehudah. We don't call ourselves any of the other named after the other tribes. Collectively, we named ourselves after Judah. So, and that most likely this was written after the fact, written back into history to acknowledge the reality, which was what was so, which was that Judah ultimately became the dominant tribe of the Israelite experience. I love what you suggested only because I like to make it personal again, because it's instructive. I had a young woman come to see me this past week. People still come to see me. So I show up.
And always will.
Yeah, so I show up. Can I talk to you? 24-year-old child of the congregation who hasn't been here since her bat mitzvah. But in any event, so, struggling with life and decisions and school and lots of things, and beating herself up over one decision she made or another decision she made, why she went to this college, why she did this, all these things, torturing herself, feeling paralyzed by the consequences of her previous choices. Part of the conversation I had with her was the same conversation. You made decisions that were perfectly reasonable at the time. Go to this college, or go to here, or move to Washington, or move. It's like, you can't look back 5 years later and go, what was I thinking? What you were thinking seemed perfectly reasonable. It seemed like it made sense. Was it whatever? And that's who we are at every stage of our lives, every day of our lives. There's only today. There isn't any past anymore. It's only right now. All we get to live in is today. So today you get to make a different choice. Okay.
And actually, those mistakes that we think we made back when we were less mature,
Yes.
I think are the lessons that taught us the most.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they're called growing pains. They're not called growing pleasures. They're usually called growing pains because we learn out of challenges or difficulties or, screw-ups that we make or whatever. We go, oh, well, that didn't work out. What was it that didn't work out? And I mean, the challenge is to learn from those things. Yes, that's true. And not to keep doing the same thing and accept a different result. The challenge is, okay, well, maybe I should turn right this time because I keep turning left and I keep bumping into the same wall, so I think I should go right. So,
isn't the reality, the big picture, that it's so hard when you're 23, 24?
Yes.
You don't see that, if you're 42 or 62.
Or 70-something.
Yeah,
Right.
you can see it. And
we learn more.
Right, so people live in the here and now, but they're probably thinking, how will this affect my future? This is what that young girl was thinking about, her future.
Yeah,
I understand.
And really all I wanted to do was get that, welcome to life. This is everybody's life. It's not like you are somehow a failure in life because your choice didn't work out the way you imagined it was going to work out exactly. That's everybody has stories of that in their lives if they live long enough. Everybody has stories of, well, I thought this, I thought that, I had this relationship, I had this choice, I had this career, I had this job, I had this, a million things that we do that and so it's now what? Okay, so now we learn this, then what choices do we make? So look, that's part of this week's Torah portion. By the way, did I tell you that famous Harry Golden, I'm looking at, Harry Golden story of who, great Jewish storyteller, Harry Golden, who famously was quoted, I think he wrote it in one of his books, that, his father used to went to an Orthodox shul somewhere, because most people did at one point. His father went to this Orthodox shul, and his father wasn't particularly pious, didn't believe in anything, but he used to go. Every week he'd go to his Orthodox shul, and Harry Golden's famous story is he said to his father one day, what do you go to shul for when you're not a believer, you don't really believe the words of the prayers that you say, and you keep going anyway? And his father said, look, Jews go to synagogue for lots of different reasons. My friend Garfinkel, who is Orthodox, he goes to talk to God, and I go to talk to Garfinkel. Anyway, I don't know why I thought of it today, but I thought of it today. So, come for different reasons. Some to learn about Torah, and others to schmooze with somebody who's going to show up. That's what community is about. So, this week's Torah, I'm talking about the Torah portion, and I'll get to that another version of what we're just talking about, because this is what Joseph, what is Joseph's, part of Joseph's brilliance, really, to me in the Torah, is his ability to revalue. Mordecai Kaplan would have been very happy. It was one of Kaplan's words. To revalue experiences of the past, right? I mean, we were just talking about what does something mean? Well, what did that moment of history mean, or what did this mean, or these tribes mean, or when you look back, how is history going to judge it? So, how did Joseph judge the behavior of his brothers, who, after all, were about to kill him, then sold him into slavery, and we're like, the last thing they wanted was to have anything to do with him, and didn't see him for a couple of decades. And in this portion, like earlier in Genesis, after they meet, and they realize that's our brother who we sold into slavery, who's sitting up on that throne, basically, and Daddy dies, and then they're terrified again, right?
What's he going to do to us?
What's he going to do to us now that Dad isn't here anymore? And what does Joseph say? Oh, look, maybe we should read the Torah. That would be frightening, wouldn't it? I should read something. Okay, turn to, if you're all in the green book, everybody?
Yep.
Okay, turn to page 295. Just skip to the end for a moment. 295. Just to let you know. Jacob dies. And Jacob says, when I die, don't bury me here in Egypt. Promise me you'll schlep me back to Canaan, and you'll bury me in the cave of Machpelah, where my fathers are buried, where Abraham's buried, where Isaac's buried, where everybody but Rachel's buried. Right? Because we buried her along the side of the road.
They found that cave.
Cave of Machpelah? Yeah, they think they have the cave of Machpelah. They near Hebron. So they do. They schlep him to there. They bury him there. They come back. And then, verse 14, Joseph then returned to Egypt, he, his brothers, and all who had gone with him to bury his father after burying his father. Joseph's brothers, seeing that their father was dead, now said, Oi. Somewhere buried in the Hebrew. Oi, perhaps Joseph still bears us enmity. I can't imagine why we sold him into slavery. And intends to repay us for all the harm that we inflicted upon him. So they brought a charge to Joseph saying, charge meaning a lie, your father left this charge before his death, saying, thus shall you say to Joseph, please, I beg of you, forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin. Though they inflicted harm upon you, yet now please forgive the transgression of the servants of your father's God. First of all, as far as we can tell, Jacob never said that to the brothers.
See the committee writing.
At all. The brothers got together and went, what should we do? And they came up with this slight fabrication, knowing that they had just schlepped all the way back to Canaan with a whole entourage, and then all the way back again, based on a deathbed request of Jacob, and that Joseph had mobilized like a lot of stuff in order to fulfill that deathbed request. So they invented another deathbed request from his father, Joseph's father Jacob, in an attempt at protecting themselves from Joseph's retribution, and said, by the way, before Dad died, when you weren't around, he said, please tell Joseph this and have him hopefully not bring retribution upon all of you. Interestingly enough, from this passage, a Talmudic principle arose that mipnei darchei shalom, for the sake of paths of peace, you can make things up. Literally. It's not exactly how the Talmud put it, but that's pretty much how the Talmud put it. Literally says, it's okay to tell little white lies for the sake of peace, for the sake of family harmony.
Not the same as Shalom Bayit.
For the sake of Shalom Bayit. Although they use a broader term here, Mibnei Darchei Shalom, which doesn't apply just to the family, paths of peace, because they use that same phrase in the Talmud, Mibnei Darchei Shalom, to say we take care of the poor of non-Jews just as we take care of the poor of Jews, Mibnei Darchei Shalom. For the sake of paths of peace, we don't just take care of our own, we extend our tzedakah, our gimilut chasadim, our acts of loving kindness to non-Jews as well, mipnei darchei shalom, for the sake of paths of peace in the community, to make peace in the community. So they use the same principle based upon this slight fabrication of the brothers of Joseph to say, look, for the sake of peace, you can make things up. They said the same thing, mipnei shalom bayit, earlier when when God tells a small creative reporting of something that Abraham said to Sarah at one point earlier on, and for the sake of peace, and so they say the same thing, that how do I look in this dress? I don't know. Whatever. You say what you say for the sake of Mipnei Darchei Shalom.
Personally.
Yes.
When I think about this line, I wish I had been aware of it earlier, because I never lie. People say to me, sometimes it's bad not to lie, and it's a good thing to lie.
Your friends should just learn what questions to ask and what questions not to ask you, if they know you're going to tell them the truth.
Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that.
Yeah. It's a challenge, it's a challenge. Here's the thing. Parents, when I used to do parenting workshops, after some of my brilliant books, I used to do parenting workshops, and often one of the issues that parents would bring up is telling the truth to your kids, or not, about everything, some things, mostly their own past. I don't want to tell my kid that I did this or did that, or now that marijuana's coming back, it'll be a different question or whatever. But, things like that. And I remember often having conversations about the role of truth in life. That truth, of course, honesty, truth, forthrightness is a value, and it's an important value. Of course, parents want their kids to be truthful, but it's not the only value. There are lots of values that we have, and part of living in the world is recognizing that often we have competing values that are all values of ours. That means they're all things that we value and think are important, qualities we think are important, and here's 5 of them, but they may not all be of equal priority at any given moment. Sometimes in our lives, one of those values takes precedence over another value, and maybe safety of your children, protection, health, may take precedence in certain circumstances over truth, over whatever, or whatever. That's part of the art of living and the challenge of living, and why it's always a challenge, and there aren't just, here's the handbook of how to do everything, and you turn to page 32 and it says always do this, or always. There are very few alwayses, in life, because circumstances change, life changes, and you make the best decisions you can given the information that you have.
Even the 10 Commandments get argued about a lot.
Yeah, everybody, it's like this or that, or,
right.
The Torah says, Makeh ish v'meit mot yumat. One of my favorite phrases, because it's a little short, powerful, punchy Torah phrase. Makeh ish v'meit mot yumat. Which means, if a person strikes another person and he dies, you die. It's the short capital punishment statement. In Leviticus it says, if a man hits another man, Makeh ish v'meit, you hit another man, and he dies, then you die. You will surely die, put to death. Oh, it's easy to say. It sounds short and sweet.
But it can also mean a lot of different things.
But there's lots of circumstances in which, what do you mean? If I hit somebody and they die, I die. What if that person was coming at me, trying to kill me? What if, it's an accident? What if I'm, swinging an axe to chop down a tree, and the head of the axe that I just got from a store or whatever, or someone loaned me, flew off, hit someone, and they die? Is that murder? Certainly death, killed somebody. Is it the same as premeditated murder? It's, life is more complicated than Makeh ish v'meit mot yumat. What about war? What about we send people out there to do exactly that? Go out there and kill people. We don't kill every soldier that comes back. Sorry, thanks for fulfilling the job. But it says here, if you kill somebody, you die, so we're going to kill you all. I mean, life is much more complicated than that, and that's part of why we sit and wrestle with Torah and everything else, because life's messy and complicated. No idea how we got onto that, but in any event, here we are. So Joseph's brothers make up a little lie to try to, because they're scared, obviously. What does Joseph respond? Joseph wept as they spoke to him. First of all, well, what does that suggest? Joseph wept as they spoke to him. What do you think?
He was touched.
He was touched. He was emotional about this, profoundly emotional about this. His brothers also prostrated themselves before him and said, "Here we are, we're your slaves. Just don't kill us. Do what you want, but don't kill us. We're your slaves." And Joseph said to them, "Have no fear. For am I in place of God?" Meaning, what? Am I going to judge you? God, even more than just, am I going to judge you? Though you intended me harm, this is the punchline, though you intended me harm, I'll read it differently. Though you intended me harm, God intended it for good. Whoever God is. God intended it for good in order to accomplish what is now the case, to keep alive numerous people. Now therefore have no fear, I will provide for you and your children, essentially. Thus did he comfort them and speak straight to their hearts. Actually, really kind of a cool translation. So, what does Joseph do with this reminder that they, his brothers, sold him into slavery, so please have mercy on us, Dad, made up whatever they made up about their father. And Joseph says,
all is forgiven.
He reinterprets history.
Yes.
In his own way.
And it was meant for good.
He says, yeah, you thought it was a curse, like what looked like a curse turned into a blessing. Isn't life that way? You know.
Isn't that true? What happened in the story?
It's exactly true what happened in the story, right? So, because he can look back on it, now that, at the time, if you'd asked Joseph when he was in the pit, if you'd asked Joseph when he was in, the servant, when he was in the next stage, which was in jail, trying to get out of jail, if you'd asked Joseph all those times, so what do you think of what your brothers did to you? You think in any of those moments, Joseph was going to say, they're just doing God's work. I'm just enslaved here because obviously God wanted me to be here. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, he believed the dream.
Wow. So maybe he would have said, and he did say every once in a while, well, God had faith that God will take care of him. But that's a little different than how he judges the actions of his brothers. Part of it, to me, one of the lessons I'm always relearning over and over again is the power of attitude to determine our lives, how we feel about life. Is your life good? Is your life bad? It's like when Jacob is introduced to the Pharaoh a little earlier on in the story, when Jacob and when the brothers are reunited and they go back and they get their father and they all come down and Joseph gives them land to live in Goshen, and they're all reunited after 22 years of being apart. They're reunited. Oh yeah, that's why this is up here for the 17 years at the end of Jacob's life, the last 17 years of Jacob's life. He gets to be reunited with his son, just like the first 17 years of Joseph's life. Joseph was allegedly 17 when his brothers sold him off into slavery. Joseph, who was Jacob's favorite, of course, that's the whole deal. The whole story, the coat and all that stuff. That Joseph was Jacob's favorite. So after 17 years, he's gone. So the first 17 years, and then there's the last 17 years of Jacob's life, he's once again reunited with Joseph. Anyway, when he meets Pharaoh, he says to Pharaoh about his life, remember, he was 147 years old when he died, according to the Torah. 147 years. He meets Pharaoh up here at the beginning of the last 17 years of his life. So he's 130 already when he meets Pharaoh. This is Jacob, having gone through all of the things that Jacob, the whole Jacob story. Remember the Jacob story? Jacob and Esau and fleeing off to Haran and living with Lavan and marrying Leah, wanting to marry Rachel and marrying Leah, then marrying Rachel and getting Zilpah and Bilhah. He's got 4 wives. He's got 12 sons and a daughter. He's got all this stuff. He goes through all of these ups and downs of life. For 130 years, he describes his life to Pharaoh as few and hard were the years of my life. That's what he says earlier in the Torah. Few and hard were the years of my life. This is how he's interpreted his own life. He could have said, amazing and long were the years of my life. Do you know what I was able to do? I'm 130 years old. Look what I've done. Wow. Do you realize what I've been able to do and dreams of God and ladders up to heaven and all this stuff? And amazing. He was by the way, an angel showed up and changed my name from Jacob to Israel. I'm going to be the father of nations. I'm going to be, we call our whole selves after Jacob. Jacob isn't just Jacob. Jacob is the paradigm, the model, the archetype of all of the Jewish people ever since. Not Abraham, not Isaac, Jacob. Jacob's the one. Jacob/Israel. Jacob becomes Israel. Jacob is more than just a person. Jacob is a people. At the same time, he's back and forth. It's like a shapeshifter. He's back and forth between individual human being Jacob and collectively the people of Israel. He's our model. Wandering Jews. He's our model. But he says, few and hard were the years of my life. Joseph gets to describe his own life. We all get to describe our own lives. Here, Joseph reinterprets the experiences of his life to his brothers the way he chooses to do it. Yeah, you intended harm, you thought you intended harm, but really you were just instruments of God's will. So that I could be here in a position to save your lives and all of us and blah, 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 and whatever. To me, there's no more powerful lesson in life than that lesson. That we have the power to choose our attitude about life. And determine what we decide is the blessing and what we decide is the curse of life. Yeah.
Isn't it interesting, though, that Jacob, who was Israel, is describing the history of the Jewish people? Short, few years, actually, and very hard. So maybe he wasn't describing his own personal life, but a prediction of the hard life the Jews are going to have throughout their culture.
Yeah, was it a blessing or was it a curse that Jews have been kicked out of every country in Europe at one point or another? That Jews have had the history that we've had.
Talk about attitude.
Blessing, curse, blessing, curse, blessing, curse. Yeah, yes, and no, and yes. Nobody wants to be beaten up and have pogroms and holocausts and all the other things that have happened to the Jewish people. And who are we? And who have we? How are we still here?
Let's eat.
Exactly. It's like the fact that we're still here is insane and counterintuitive.
So Jacob's Jacob's attitude may have been.
It's like, yeah.
The definition.
So, part of the challenge of life is always deciding how you're going to react to the experiences that happen when you don't get to always choose the experiences that happen.
We
are here, all of us are here because somebody came here from somewhere. We're a nation of immigrants. Or ex-slaves, one or the other. But we are here because somebody, ourselves, our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, or wherever you want to go, came here from somewhere. The people who came here from somewhere were, of the population this long, this much of that population, no matter how bad it was, no matter how many people got killed in the pogroms, or no matter how many starved because of a potato famine, or no matter whatever country they came from, no matter how bad it was, only this little percentage of people had whatever it takes to say, I'm out of here, I'm off, I'm leaving, I'm going, I'm jumping on a boat, I'm going on a whatever, to some other country to make a new life.
And we all became members of the tribe of Judah.
And those people are the ancestors of everybody in the country constantly over and over and over again, no matter what country they came from,
right.
Jewish or not. It's that group that made up this country and continues to, God willing, be able to make up this country and, have doors that are open to some of those people. But the curse of this, the famine, the pogroms, the whatevers, led to the blessings of this, who were able to schlep with them, sometimes with nothing. We were at a funeral yesterday of Michael Jipes. Michael Jipes, one of our longtime members, Michael and Edna. And, his dear old friends and children spoke and told the story of, Michael, born in Budapest and, eventually fleeing from, first hidden in the Holocaust by a group of nuns who bravely hid Jewish kids.
On the other side of the wall.
Right on the other side, literally on the other side of the wall of the Gestapo. I mean, it was like, the story was actually remarkable when you sat and listened, read the story. I mean, their convent, the wall of their convent literally was on the other side of where the Gestapo in Budapest was. And they were hiding kids, like, right.
They took the children that they were
right there
and risked their own lives.
Yes.
Converted them and taught them very quickly all the words, the catechism, so that if the Gestapo quizzed them, they knew it. They knew the catechism.
And they baptized all these kids to save their lives, and so they could honestly say they're all Catholic. When there were people pounding on the door and asking them, we don't have any Jewish kids here, they're all Catholic, they're all baptized Catholic. In any event, and then fleeing from the Russians, after the Russians took over, Hungary, and then, eventually, and moving and walking and fording a river. I mean, it was a fabulous story they didn't tell yesterday of Mike, and when they were trying to escape from the Russians, Mike and two other guys who lit out in the middle of the night, and they were going to swim across the river to another country bordering on Hungary, and it was freezing, and the river was freezing, but they said it's like life or death, so they swam across the river, freezing, got to the other side, and realized they were still in Hungary. With the wrong river. And in fact got out because, and they look, imagine, freezing, and then they just got out of this icy water, and it was freezing. Some Hungarian soldier found them, and actually help them escape. So you go that way, basically. In any event, right or left, life or death, I mean, there's people in this room that have had experiences and family experiences similarly. So,
and Mike's attitude was success, move, learn, teach,
it's like,
and he did.
But he might have. I'm just thinking about Joseph and Jacob.
I brought it up.
That, in the hard times, they're not thinking, well, I'm going to be positive and go forward.
No.
It's more of like, this is bad, I got to keep fighting.
Right.
Yeah.
And even Jacob, I mean, maybe waiting those 7 years, maybe that was tough. And then he had another 7 years to wait. It might have been very tough.
It definitely wasn't easy.
Perseverance.
Right. I mean, I guess he didn't look at the joys, but I mean, I don't know, I feel like I'm a little bit sensitive to Jacob, that he indeed did hang in there for those blessings, and certainly Joseph had a long, wasn't it this?
That's the other thing. Here's the other thing. Who has an easy life in here?
Nobody.
Whose life goes smoothly, easily, beautifully, everything falls, hearts and roses. That's not the way life is. So what makes the Torah so compelling always is it's not like everybody's, a Greek god somewhere. Of course, they had screwed up lives too, but, it's like they're struggling and screwing up and doing bad things, and, look, the one thing here in this portion, Joseph brings his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, right? Two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. That's the other thing I want to point out anyway. I love my Torah commentaries. To be blessed by Jacob, because that's what you do, right? Oh, there's a little reminiscent here of, let me think, Jacob and Esau coming to their father to be blessed. Anyway, Joseph brings his two sons, on page 285. Might as well read it. 285. Chapter 48, verse 8. Anyway, so for a second we'll read that. But this is Joseph, because he's being told that Jacob, his father's on his deathbed. Heard that before? So he comes with his two sons to be blessed, hopefully by their grandfather. Right? So, Israel saw Joseph's sons, all of a sudden it's Israel. I love the Torah. It goes back and forth. Sometimes it's Jacob. Sometimes Jacob's called Israel. There's got to be a reason. There are no accidents in the Torah. Somebody wrote this. Somebody edited this carefully. Somebody edited every word in here. The rabbis say, Ein milah miuteret b'Torah. There is no extraneous word in the Torah. If it's there for a reason. So, you can conjecture, but the reason here, it's Israel, the collective people, saw Joseph's sons, asked, who are these? Like he didn't recognize them? Oh, wait a minute. When Jacob and Esau went to get blessed by their father, Isaac, what condition was Isaac in? Oh yeah, his eyes were dimmed and he couldn't quite see everything right. And so they have Jacob pulls a little switcheroo and whatever, The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau, and blah, blah, blah. And he gives the whatever blessing. Can't really see. Hint, hint. Wink, wink. Okay. So, here we are. Jacob says, Israel says, who are these? Joseph says, they're my sons whom God has given to me here. Jacob then said, bring them to me, pray that I may bless them. Oh, Israel's eyes had grown clouded with age. He could no longer see. Joseph brought them over to him, whereupon he kissed and hugged them. Israel then said to Joseph, I never expected to see your face again, and here God has shown me your progeny as well. Okay. Greatest blessing, according to the rabbis of the Talmud, is to live to see your grandchildren. I should tell my daughter she better start having kids. Joseph then removed them from his knees, bowed down before him to the ground. Joseph took the two of them, Ephraim with his right hand to Israel's left, and Manasseh with his left hand to Israel's right, and he brought them close to him. But, lo and behold, shockingly, even though the same thing has happened in every single generation so far, from Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, shockingly, Israel switches his hands. His right hand and placed on Ephraim's head, even though he was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his arms, though Manasseh was the firstborn. He then blessed Joseph, saying, the God before whom walked my fathers Abraham and Isaac, God who has shepherded me ever since I came into being until this day, the angel who has rescued me from all harm, sort of doing a recap of his whole life here, bless these lads. Through them let my name and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac ever be recalled, and let them greatly multiply within the land. When Joseph saw that his father had placed his right hand on Ephraim's head, it seemed wrong to him. So he took hold of his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head onto the head of Manasseh. Joseph said to his father, "Not that way, father. This is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused, saying, "It should be different now than it's been from every generation. I know, my son, I know. He too shall become a people. He too shall be great. Yet his younger brother shall be greater than he." This is like every single generation. Somebody says, the younger will precede the older. The younger will be bigger than the older. Excuse me.
What is that all about?
Hang on, I will tell you. "And his seed shall become a multitude of nations." So he blessed them that day, saying, "By you shall the people of Israel give their blessings, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." And he put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. Saying, "Yesimcha Elohim Ephraim u'Manasseh." May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. I don't know if you guys do it, or did it, ever, but certainly it has been a very ancient, long-held Jewish tradition to say these exact words on Shabbat as the words of blessings of parents to their sons. It is the traditional blessing that parents give to sons on Shabbat, is to put your hands on the heads of your sons and say these words here that I just read from this Torah portion. Yisimcha Elohim Ephraim u'Manasseh. May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh.
And why would you not put your hands like this?
Please, I don't. The idea is put them any way you want. Put your hands on, recreate this. It has not been a tradition that everybody should bless their younger son more than their older son, ever since biblical times. But these words that Jacob says, it is, by you shall the people bless their children. It's exactly what's taken place. It used to be, by the way, the tradition, there was a tradition in ages past of invoking this blessing not every Shabbat, but once a year on Kol Nidre. In many European communities, the tradition was once a year, Kol Nidre, fathers would bless their sons. May you be like Ephraim and Manasseh. Evolved into an every Shabbat kind of experience. Bless your sons. What do we bless our daughters with?
Be like Ruth and Esther.
May our daughters be like, not exactly, that's only if you're further on the roof. May your daughters be like Rachel, and Leah, and Sarah, and Rebecca.
Do you suppose that was not wanting to favor one child over the other just because of age?
Well, no. Look, in the ancient world, there was the inheritance laws were such that something called primogeniture, right? The oldest son got the majority of everything, and in many cultures, every other son had to leave town. You know, the oldest son inherited the business or the field or the whatever, and the younger one was out of luck and off.
So
I'm watching The Crown at the moment. You ever watch The Crown?
I'm watching it too.
Cool. You know, so it's sort of like Margaret, poor Margaret. You know, like the oldest daughter gets to be the queen, and the other one's like, SOL. She's out of luck. You know, she's like, what do I do? Who am I? And like, I'm an also-ran. And so that's what it was. So, why did they keep switching this? Back to your original comment almost an hour ago about the text of the Torah apparently being written long after the fact. Someone wrote these stories. Some scholars, biblical scholars, have suggested that because Solomon succeeded David, and Solomon was not David's oldest son. Because Solomon succeeded David, the entire Torah stories were then ultimately written in such a way as to constantly favor the younger over the older, to inherit the younger, then that generation, then the younger inherited, then the younger inherited, then the younger inherited, and here I am, King Solomon.
This is the precedent.
Just the precedent, just like with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And then that's where it was. Who knows? Because we're not there when it was written.
But you think
because it goes,
it
clearly goes contrary to
the tradition,
to the established tradition of every culture in the world at the time, including. So, in any event, so who knows? But why? Here's the eternal question: has been, of all the people, to biblical characters to invoke to bless your sons every week, if you're a traditional Jew, to say, may you be like Ephraim and Manasseh. Who the hell are Ephraim and Manasseh to be the people that you're going to be? Like, what do they ever do? You know? Be like Moses? Be like Abraham. Solomon? Be like Abraham? David. Have faith to wander and leave your, don't be like Abraham. He left his father's house, so we don't want to bless our kids with that. But be like, with the girls, we bless them with, be like the matriarchs. We don't bless the boys, be like the patriarchs. We bless them, be like Ephraim and Manasseh. So why? So
they didn't fight.
So one rabbinic response is, they're the first siblings who didn't fight with each other.
That's funny.
First siblings that have
set up by doing this, then they still didn't fight.
We don't have any record of them. Every other generation of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's kids fighting, jealousy.
But how old were they? They were old enough to fight.
Ephraim and Manasseh. I don't know how old they were.
What do you do with three sons, Dana? Ephraim and Manasseh. Who else?
The more common response, that is one of the traditional rabbinic responses, they didn't fight. They were the first siblings who didn't fight. The more common rabbinic answer to that question, because the rabbis in rabbinic literature wrestled with the same question, because it was like, Mapitom, why these people? More common rabbinic response is, they are the best models of what Jewish life has been for the last 2,000 years. That is, even though they were the first Jewish children born in the diaspora, and even though they were born from an interfaith marriage, after all, their mother was Osnat, the daughter of an Egyptian priest, not of really traditional Jewish heritage, married Joseph, had these two boys, born in the luxury of Egypt, born in every single possible way, not connected or raised connected to their heritage, their Jewish heritage and tradition. Even so, they became two of the tribes of Israel. Even so, when Jacob here, what Jacob's doing, by the way, is adopting them, he says, your children are now my children. I'm now making them equal to my kids in inheritance. They became two of the tribes of Israel. The tribe of Ephraim, the tribe of Manasseh. So they become exactly what Jewish parents wanted to bless their children with. May you, like Ephraim and Manasseh, no matter where in the world we happen to be, whether we're in Poland, or whether we're in Brazil, or whether we're in Spain, or whether we're kicked out of this country, this country, or that country, wherever we may be, may you too still feel connected enough to your heritage that you, wherever you go, carry it with you. And live out and become a member of the tribe, the greater tribe of Israel, Judah's tribe. So, in that sense, it makes sense, right? It actually makes sense that all over the world, this is the blessing, they would say, like, remember Ephraim and Manasseh, even though they had it better than you, they were born in a palace, for God's sake. They were like, they had everything going for them. Still, they schlepped out. Their descendants schlepped with Moses, left and went to Israel and became part of the Jewish people in that sense.
Just real quick, because there are 12 male names.
Yeah, who isn't there?
I'm sure the two that...
So who isn't there? There's no... Levites. The Levites didn't get a portion.
Because they're...
Reuben, Shimon, Levi didn't. Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Gad, Asher, Dan, Naphtali. There's no tribe of Joseph.
Okay. So who was Joseph's wife?
Asnat, A-S-N-A-T.
And what do we know about her?
Not much, other than she was the daughter of an Egyptian priest, and she was given to when Pharaoh lifted Joseph out of prison, and Joseph interpreted his dreams, and Pharaoh said, "Sounds good, you be in charge, make it happen." They then gave him Asnat as his wife to sort of further cement the assimilation of Joseph into the sort of extended royal family in that sense. And that's all we really know about her. We don't know, from the Torah, we don't know anything.
Jacob's daughter.
We don't know anything about Dinah. Doesn't even show up here anymore. We don't know what happened to her. Girls, girls are like, girls in the Torah are hard to find. So we don't know much about Dinah either. And here in the very end, we learn that Joseph dies at 110, which was supposedly the ideal lifespan of in Egypt, but we don't know anything. It doesn't tell us about the other brothers when they died or anything else. Just because it doesn't matter. We zero in on Joseph. This is Joseph's story, really. Joseph and Jacob's story.
Was this Dinah?
Dinah was the rape victim. By the way, the rabbis also say, from this portion we learn the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim, of visiting the sick. Because it's from this portion that Joseph is told, your father's ill, and Joseph immediately comes and to visit him, brings his kids. And so we learn the importance of Bikur Cholim, of visiting the sick, from this Torah portion as well. So much more to talk about, but we're not going to. Anyway, I put this up here, as long as I wrote it on the board, just because 17 was the
years before and after.
17, the last 17 of Jacob's life were considered the best years, by Jacob, according to the rabbis, the best years of his life.
Why didn't the
and they
make that 18?
17, because it paralleled the first 17 years of being with Joseph.
Both 18.
They could have. Yes, you're right. I don't know why they didn't. Because 18 became something much later. Because the idea of 18 is a much later in Jewish history notion. That's why.
Okay. Prime number.
But so 17. Besides, 17 is the equivalent of Tov, which means good. So therefore, it's the best. It means good. And 17, the first 17 years and the second 17 years put together equals 34, which is the equivalent of the Hebrew word Vayechi, which is the very beginning of this portion, which is and he lived. How do we know the last 17 years of life before he lived? Because he that's how we know.
Amazing.
His joy of living was when he was with his favorite son Joseph, the first 17, the last 17. Isn't that beautiful? Nothing like Gematria.
Historic meaning